Good afternoon and welcome everyone. And why not say good evening for those who will be watching and connecting with us later on. And good morning to those who will connect with us in the future as well, streaming by demand this amazing moment that we will be spending together here now. One more afternoon, Saturday afternoon, March 5th, talking about times of health and consciousness with Kirsten. Before we go ahead and pass the word to Kirsten tonight, let us read a passage of the book Happy Life and pray together so we can set our hearts, our minds. I know we already prepared. I know we already woke up this morning full of energy saying today's a day that we're going to meet again and we're going to connect. But let us read this passage. Learn the lessons of life, but particularly learn from your own experiences. Do not believe the siren song that seduce and drag you into the abyss. If the alcoholic wants to free himself from alcoholism, he will easily find someone ready to serve him another drink rather than to give him bread. If the smoker wants to give up tobacco, his friends will laugh at him and try to make him continue poisoning himself. If the addict tries to give up his drug, the drug dealer will threaten and blackmail him. If the criminal of any type attempts to rehabilitate himself, those who will conspire against him will swarm around him. So be careful and keep yourself physically and morally healthy. This way, dear Lord, we would like to ask that you guide all of our minds and our hearts together in one thought and one feeling so that we can connect this afternoon into this evening as we learn new things, as we are reminded of new things under the light of Spiritism. We're thankful for having one another, the environment where we are right now, our homes, wherever we may be watching and connecting with this message in the future too. We also would like to thank for the opportunity to connect with Kirsten DeMelo, who kindly prepared this presentation for us, worked hard to bring all the teachings to be shared here and to connect with one another. Most importantly, we also connect with our mentors, the mentors of the SSB, our Master Jesus, guiding us all towards perfection. And we pray that this message, this comforting moment, also can be shared with others. May we send our good vibrations to our brothers and sisters who are going through the turmoils of life. We not only acknowledge the wars that are going on in Europe, in other places of the world as well, but also the conflicts, the wars inside of us, the little turmoils that unfortunately does not get to be addressed because sometimes we're fearful, sometimes we are not able to get to, or just neglect. We ask you, dear Lord, that you guide us through these teachings of tonight to do so and live a better life, planning a better future. And collectively, if we take care of our own wars, we will hopefully take care of the bigger issues in life. We thank you for this moment, your guidance and protection, and so be it. So, as we were saying earlier, today is a day that Kirsten comes to us to bring one more chapter. Today, chapter 12 of the book, Times of Health and Conscientiousness. And the title of this chapter is Extra Physical Perception. And who does not have this capability, or who has it? What is it, right? So, I'll let Kirsten lead us into this amazing moment. And with no further ado, it's all you now, Kirsten. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leo, for that introduction. And good evening, good afternoon, everyone. We are excited, and our heart is so open and at the same time bursting at the seams to be with all of you and to talk about this subject, to talk about this book. And bear with me as I go a little bit down memory lane. memory lane. Sorry, some technical issues there. But for those of you who can recall their childhood a little bit, you might have be familiar with the song that goes a little bit like, "You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about." So if you can recall that song, and the reason why I asked you to recall that song, at least if you grew up here in the States like I did, um, the reason why we bring it to mind is because we've often heard that, the occult and all things occult, um, can be hokey pokey, can just be, nonsense. But the interesting thing about that song is they end with, "You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around, and that's what it's all about." And and as um, childish as that might be in some ways, and very rudimentary, in a way that it is what it's all about. Us here connecting with the divine within us, connecting with one another. This is what it's all about. This is what life is about. This is what brings meaning to life. Especially now more than ever, in the times of trials and tribulations when we see other countries that are struggling. Now more than ever, we try to connect with that divine within us and our creator above. This spiritual Wi-Fi, which I heard earlier on a talk by John Santos, earlier this, actually, it wasn't earlier today. It was from actually probably about a week or so, or a few weeks ago. And we love what he said, because he said that, how sometimes you get into different areas with your Wi-Fi and you have good spots and down spots, but God's Wi-Fi, there are no bad spots. It's always there, probably better than 5G. Right now 5G is the new buzz thing, right? But it's probably like a million G. We just can't fathom that as of right now. But that's what it is. And that's part of the nature and the beauty of the spirit realm, all things that are, in the happy worlds. There are things that we cannot yet conceive of, that our imagination does not, maybe for some, but rarely can we conceive of the immensity of the emotion, the type of love that is bestowed upon us. So why are we mentioning all this? Well, we're mentioning all this because this book, Times of Health and Conscientiousness, now more than ever is a time for us to be conscientious. And that encompasses our health and overall well-being. In this particular chapter, chapter 12, Joanna talks about extra physical perception. And this is the hokey pokey stuff we're talking about. The stuff that, you might see on Hollywood movies like The Sixth Sense, or the phenomenon of mediumship, or all those types of things that people are really attracted to. That's why the sci-fi, um, genre is so popular, because there is that appeal to it. But also, I believe there's something within us that wants that magical connection with the divine. And guess what? We all can tap into it. And now, more than ever, more than ever, is a time for us to do that. But like every chapter, Joanna always starts out with positive affirmations. Kirsten, why does she do this? There's purpose in everything that Joanna does in her books. When we do the positive affirmations, it's to fine-tune us as the instrument. So join me in reading these out loud, Or just listen and try to take in this message. She says, divine consciousness opens me up to the infinite and astounds me. Divine consciousness opens me up and astounds me. I leave my suffocating and agonizing limitations behind and enter the grandeur of life in which I am expanding. Immersed in my inner world, I see, hear, and perceive reality without barriers, without fog, a reality from which I have come and to which I will return. I am one with my Father, and I am free. Words to think about as we connect with this divine within us, reminding us that we have this divine consciousness within us. Let us connect. Let us open up our mental field and let us be open-minded to learn something new. You might think, well, I've learned all that there is. I've heard it all. I've watched and I've read everything. What else could I possibly learn? If we come to the table with an air of curiosity, we are bringing the open part of us. Some might refer to it as self-energy. But when we come with curiosity instead of with judgment, we're able to grow. And Joanna starts out this chapter in the following way. She says, there is an urgent need to have an inner life in order to achieve identification with reality. What reality is she talking about? There's an urgent need to have an inner life in order to achieve identification with reality? I'm posing a question for all of you who are watching. What reality is she referring to? And if I do not have a connection to my inner life, am I not connected to reality? And if I am connected to reality, what reality is it? And there's a famous adage that says our perspectives are our reality. So how we are perceiving things, that's our reality. She goes on to say, the world of the physical senses, in view of its significance and purpose of putting individuals in contact with external manifestations, distances them from profound yet subtle insights into a full life. So we live in a physical world, and that can sometimes distract us from all things that are spiritual. Restricting individuals to the realm of objective manifestations, it keeps them from broadening their paranormal capabilities, which open the portals to the infinite field of causality. Opening up our mind, just as she discussed, just as she utilized her affirmations, it's about unlocking this divine within us and this connection that we have with our Creator and consequently everything that is around us. Now, the interesting thing is whether or not we are plugged into this spiritual Wi-Fi, or whether we believe, I should say, let me fix what I said. Whether we believe we are connected to this spirit realm Wi-Fi or not, we are. So how conscientious we are of our own inner reality, our connection with the divine, instead of being solely distracted by the physical, is going to determine what kind of life we're going to be living. And it's important for us to know, and we bring the following from the book Evolution in Two Worlds. We're bringing this text, and it's a quote from the book, and it's the following. The incarnate companions were immersed in the mental concentration. Let me go back. They are describing a situation where they are together in a meeting. So the Angelis is describing the psychosphere. So he says the incarnate companions were immersed in mental concentration, and they look different compared to our previous examination. The physical bodies appeared to conduct electromagnetic waves of elevated intensity. The nervous system, the glandular nuclei, and the plexus emitted a particular kind of luminescence. The mind, placing itself in close proximity with the brain, appeared as a sphere of light, and each companion had his own radiation potential. Excuse me, I misspoke. This is in the book In the Realms of Mediumship, Not Evolution in Two Worlds. We bring this to remind us that we are immersed in one another's fields of energy. We cannot escape that. And so what they're describing here is a spiritist meeting that they are having. And Andrea Louise is very intrigued by these group of people that prior to starting the meeting had one wavelength, but now as they all got together in harmony, it was amazing the light that they could produce. So if you can imagine a closed circuit, this goes back to rudimentary science, probably back, when you were in high school. So I hope this doesn't give you nightmares, but that the closed and open circuits, with a closed circuit, that's what produces light, right? So when we have affinity in a group, total affinity, we're able to produce this light. And so he's sort of describing some of that as well. So I digress. And this is what we're talking about. This is what Joanna is talking about. Immersed. We are immersed in an ocean of vibrations. Immersed in an ocean of vibrations, excuse me, energy and mind, and surrounded by waves and incessant thoughts. Individuals should widen their psychic capacity to be inundated with extra physical content, which does affect them even when they are not aware of it. Again, like we shared earlier, whether or not we are tapped into, whether or not we realize it or not, we are constantly tapped into this spirit realm Wi-Fi. The only difference is that either we can be much like in the movie The Matrix, when Neo takes the red pill versus the blue pill, we either can choose to be aware or not. Personally, we recommend being self-aware, because then you can choose to higher your vibration through prayer, through the types of thoughts that you feed your mind with. And yes, sometimes that takes work. Sometimes we just want to watch something that's maybe not that elevating. And our thoughts wander in different places. And then we might not even realize it unless you're uber sensitive and self-aware. But we connect with other minds. Every time I emit a thought, there's a law of association, of assimilation. So I'm connecting with others of similar like minds in the spirit realm. And those that are in the physical realm around me are also can be affected by that. So imagine an ocean. You're swimming in the ocean with a friend. You go to the beach, You both go in, and there is some seaweed, a long stretch of seaweed that's in the water, and part of it touches your friend and part of it touches you. Try to imagine it in a rudimentary way. We're all in this ocean together. But if we can learn to tap into that psychic capacity, meaning our ability to connect with higher minds, you can phrase it how you want to phrase it. Some people call it tapping into their higher self, connecting with their spirit guides, God, the Holy Spirit. It doesn't matter what we call it. As Shakespeare said, that which we call a rose by any other name would be as sweet. So it doesn't, in layman's terms, it doesn't matter what we call a rose. It will not cease to be a rose. If I call a rose a rock, it's still going to be sweet and beautiful. We go on. Joanna states that people are endowed with transceiver antennas that render them unwitting instruments of complex forces that drive them to surprising attitudes, which they could change to express their preferences, rather than being docile instruments without a will of their own. We are endowed with a transceiver antennas. So remember in the olden days how they would depict aliens with little antennas? Well, dear friends, we're here to tell you there's some truth to that. There is some truth to that. We have these transceiver antennas. So either we can be cognizant players in this game, or we are going to just be played like little strings on a I'm completely forgetting the name of it, of the puppet, and someone else is pulling the strings. Or we can be active in our lives. We can take active participation. And you might be thinking, Kirsten and I, what are you talking about? Like, I am. So this is interesting because these things are happening right now as we're speaking, and you're not even noticing it. That there are minds connected to you that are similar to you. They either are connected from previous lives or just ones that happen to connect because they like similar things. So you all are influencing one another. And if those minds are good, then that's good. You're having a positive influence. But if they happen to be the minds of those whom we have wronged in the past life, sometimes even this life, depending upon where we're at in our lifetime, or sometimes it's the minds of those that are around us in the physical form. It's not just obsession can happen, not just spirit to incarnate. It can happen from incarnate to incarnate. Let's not forget that. I digress. I go back to what Joanna's she continues to say. Within this vast range of paraphysical occurrences, telepathy, intuition, clairvoyance, clairaudience, inspiration, precognition, and retrocognition bestow indisputable blessings that are within reach of whosoever seeks them with a moral and conscientious attitude. And some of you might be thinking, you might be familiar with the term precognition. And I think it was the mid 90s or early 2000s, there was a really interesting movie that came out called The Minority Report, starring Tom Cruise. And it was a futuristic movie it was a futuristic movie. And they had these special, human beings. They were called and it was part of the police department, but it was called the precog department, where they could receive images before they happened. So it was the precognition that they were experiencing. So that's to an extreme sci-fi extent of this, but There's truth in it. There's truth in it. And let us stop and think about this for a second. Remember, we talked about hokey pokey. And we don't say that to diminish or to make light of Spiritism at all, because this is not a matter to be taken lightly. We all are mediums. We all have the ability to connect with the spirit realm. Now, we're not encouraging or saying to anyone or insinuating or inferring for anyone to go and start doing mediumistic meetings at home or doing psychographing at home. We're not advising that. Let's be clear. But what we are saying is in our day-to-day lives, we can choose the wavelengths that we connect to. And we very well may not notice that the types of movies and shows and music and friends I'm hanging around is affecting me in a subtle negative way. And one of the most dangerous things, and we learn this from the book Psychiatric and Spirit Obsession Disorders, which I'm going to show a picture of here in a little bit. You actually could see it on the screen here. Is subtle obsession. Is this subtle? Because that's when these negative influences are happening in our lives and we don't even realize it. So it's important for us to be self-aware. We wanted to bring a little bit of this book we just mentioned because we found it fascinating, the human mind and the brain. And in this particular book, that's psychographed by Divaldo Franco by the spirit Manuel Femela de Miranda, Psychiatric and Spirit Obsession Disorders. In this following text, I'll read it to you. The cerebral cortex, which is pictured here, this is the whole cerebral cortex here. This is your brain, okay? The cerebral cortex undergoes constant changes but remains connected to the neural network. Okay, great, fine. That's a great fact to know. All this equipment is altered by continuous external magnetic fields. Remember, electromagnetic wavelengths, we are immersed in all of it. What these scientists ignore is the mental bombardment carried out by the adversaries of the incarnate. Through vibrational resonances, they alter the magnetism of the extracranial fields, accelerating the death of neurons, disturbing the production of monoamines, serotonin, dopamine, responsible for the delicate structure of the cells, and producing inner disturbances related to reasoning, memory, sentiments, and behavior. So, in layman's terms, we are surrounded, we are immersed in this ocean. And one of the things that science has not looked at yet is this negative impact that the spirit realm can have on us. Negative and positive. Negative and positive. And what can happen with those that become mentally ill can be a consequence of this bombardment that Dr. Miranda shares in this book, a bombardment of these negative energies that are basically honed in on our mind/brain, and it disrupts our neural circuitry. This is why it's important for us to be self-aware, to be connected to higher vibrations, because I cannot be hurt by someone that I'm not in tune with. I can only be touched, quote unquote, by another energy if we're in sync. If we're at different energy levels, we're going this way. But when we're in sync, we're connecting. Important. And this is just the law of the mental field. As we emit an idea, we reflect the ones that are similar to ours. Where there is thought, there are mental currents. Where there are mental currents, there is association. So we are connected by the other minds that think like us, that feel like us. We have this constant psychic exchange. These are not our words. These are Joanna de Angelis' words. And we don't believe she's mixing them. She says, you are an instrument of constant psychic exchange, even though you may not realize it. You are continuously emitting and receiving vibrations, ideas, and mental energies. However you direct your thought, you will attune yourself to other thoughts of the same quality, producing affinity. You live in the vibratory world you choose due to your psychic and emotional preferences, repelling and attracting corresponding waves. According to the pattern you have cultivated, you are surrounded by identical psychic responses. In the words of homeopathy, like attracts like. It's simple, makes sense, but it's complex and hard to manage because we are creatures of habit and we tend to hold on to our negative emotions. And these are just some of the legacies that we carry from one life to another. Sometimes we also learn them from our parents, from our type of upbringing, from the culture we're brought into or grow up in. Those are legacy burdens. These are things that we need to be aware of so we can stop the negative chain reaction. So I can stop that from happening to further generations. Kirsten, this is so complex. Yeah, life is kind of complex. But lean into the complexity. Don't lean back. When we lean back from the complexity and we fear, we stunt our growth. We delay our growth. We need to, with all of our emotion, desire, will, lean into the difficulty. Lean in, get curious, learn, but also be an active player. Be intentional. Live intentionally. Choose to eat healthy. That's not all that it is. It's not, I'm just going to change my diet. Things are going to be perfect. No. Jesus said it's not what goes into your mouth that makes you holy, but what comes out. But it's everything. It's a balance in all aspects of our lives. Mental, emotional, psychosocial, all balanced and connecting. Finding time in our lives to connect with our Creator, making it a priority. Yes, you might say, yes, Kirsten, that sounds great. Yeah, I believe in God. I like the ideas of spiritism. It's nice when I listen. But then, once this talk is done and I'm left with myself, then I go back and turn on whatever I was watching before. And I just connect back to the old minds that I was connected to before I turned on the TV or turned on my computer. Because we are creatures of habit. Until we do something to break that habit, to break that cycle, we're not going to see results. And be patient, because sometimes you might not see the results right away. Be patient, have patience with yourself, have patience with others. But be aware, we are in constant psychic exchange, Joanna says. So, how do I manage? How do I manage all of this? What do I do? Okay, we know that it affects our lives. We know that it's a big part. What do I do? So Joanna shares the following. Bearing in mind the indestructibility of the soul, there are discarnate spirits within that colossal range of reality, and you interact with them, even though you may not always perceive them. By educating yourself, you can learn to receive their thoughts and maintain productive communication with them, which will begin to prepare you for the future when you rid yourself of the material envelope. So we underlined educating yourself. It is so important to do that. Let us not underestimate. In the gospel, they tell us, Spiritists, love one another and educate yourselves. It's not just words. When we educate our mind, we free our mind. When we remain uneducated, and we're not talking solely about the intellectual, because if that were the case, the world would look very different. And all the intellectuals and the great minds of this world would have produced a very different world. But it's about an education of morality, of all things that help us to be a better person. So whatever you want to call it, it's about working on our inner selves, the different parts of us, and not looking at any part of ourselves with disgust or disdain, but with compassion. And that, let's be honest, it can be really hard to do, especially when you're angry with yourself. If you yelled at your son or daughter, or even you might have, yelled at your dog or cat or parrot or what have you, or your coworker, and you look back and you feel bad, like, oh man, why did I was heated in that moment. Why did I do that? So imagine how we feel about past lives and things that we've done. But let's educate ourselves so we can open up our minds, so we can elevate our minds. So we digress. Joanna continues, without your knowing it, they influence your life, either helping you when they are good or perturbing when you are bad. Okay, let's give a more concrete example of this. So if I tell you that drinking water every day is absolutely imperative to your overall health and well-being, that making sure you eat a balanced diet, like all those things affect your health and well-being. Okay, then that's why we have a lot of people that study nutrition. We have a lot of specialists out there. We have a lot of programs. There's so much information out there and people that are connected to that because they realize that it's an important component of health. That's why most interdisciplinary teams are not only having a medical doctor, a nurse or case manager, a psychiatrist, they're also having a dietitian and nutritionist, all aspects that could potentially affect our lives. So, with that being said, if we know that there is this invisible influence happening at all times, and depending upon me, will depend upon how my life goes, wouldn't we want to take more of an active position, stance? I am the sole owner of my happiness. I am the sole owner of my own happiness. And whether I realize that or not, it's happening. Whether people realize that the grass is green or that the sky is blue, it still remains as such. This is why all the medications in the world and the therapies, after so many decades, still we have yet to come to this place of true healing, because this component has yet to be fully integrated into our healing modalities, our models, our healing models that we are utilizing in the healthcare field, on all types of fields. In some areas that we have made progress, we've made good progress. But as we were just talking today with a psychiatrist from Brazil, Dr. Alberto Almeida Moreira, offline, he was sharing with us something really interesting. And he said when his wife was in the middle of getting her PhD, she got her PhD in the history of Spiritism in Brazil and something else too. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But he said that, he would go to the library with her and they would go through all these like hundreds and hundreds of books, like medical books as well. And he said what fascinated him the most was that 100 years ago, medical science thought that they were on the verge of figuring it all out. And he said, the thing that astonishes me is that we are still, the publications that are happening today still have that same rhetoric, that same verbiage, that same perspective. Like, well, now we're on the verge of really getting it. And it seems like we keep saying that. And excuse me, let me correct. I'm sorry, I misspoke. His name is Dr. Alexander Moreira Almeida. My apologies. But 100 years ago, we thought we were on the verge. And maybe we are on the verge today. Maybe science, yes, has come a long way. And maybe we're getting closer and closer and closer. But we always have to take into account this component of our lives, this spirit realm component, and our own personal responsibility. It's important in our lives and our overall well-being. So we wanted to share this case study. It's a very brief, very short case study from this book, Psychiatric and Spirit Obsession Disorders. And Dr. Miranda just gives a little overview of this particular incarnate gentleman that is suffering an obsession. So let me read it for you. He says, he's pointing out to his other colleagues, or rather his colleagues are pointing it out, and Dr. Miranda is retelling it in the book. He says, the ailing brother over there, for instance, and he pointed to a disfigured young man, incarnate man, with a gaze fixed beyond the world of forms. He is under the vicious influence of a discarnate woman, of a young discarnate woman. He disgraced with his customary thoughtlessness. After sexually exploiting her, he abandoned her to her own fate. Without forgetting him, consumed by anguish and resentment, she discarnated in a deplorable emotional state, not even aware of the irreversible process that had brought her back to the spirit world. In other words, she didn't even know that she died. She was in so much emotional distress. Because her mind was connected to the man who had dishonored her, her spirit was automatically pulled toward him. For the sake of comparison, let's say that he, the bearer of guilt, turned into a psychical socket. So imagine a socket, electrical socket on the wall. While she, due to the suffering imposed on her, turned into a so-called plug. Immediately identifying him, she started bombarding him with her feelings of anger and hurt. And he, absorbing them, finally fell into a deep depression that is now advancing towards a more serious disorder. Remorse, guilt, anger, the desire for vengeance between the two are all mixed together, becoming one sole fixed idea that afflicts and makes them both even more miserable. So here we have a real life drama. A real life drama that we see that the errors from the past from this gentleman, this guy, follows him into this life. And because he maintains this unconscious guilt within him, his previous quote unquote victim, the person whom he had harmed, exploited in the past, and we can imagine, 18th, 19th century, even before that, the way in which women were treated was like as if we were livestock. So we weren't better than, a piece of land or livestock or an animal. So we can see the actions of this young man followed him into his future incarnation. And because she had so much hate and anger and he had so much guilt, they plugged into each other. That's not a plug. Like, like a plug into a socket. Perfect connection. Perfect. Like a glove, right? Perfect. We bring this case because this happens more often than not. Now, not every case of depression or mental disturbance is this case. It's not this specific situation every time. Every case is different. Everyone's life is different and unique and merits its own compassion and empathy and understanding. And this is not for us to sit here and judge, but to understand that we live many lifetimes, that those lifetimes affect us, and how we are emotionally today, how I am doing with my mental health, my emotions today, and every day for that matter, is affecting who I'm connecting with. That is why this is so important. It's important for all of us to know this because we don't remember our past lives. We don't remember what we've done. We might have a vague inclination. We might, you know, think to ourselves, well, hypothetically, I probably lived a lot of lifetimes. I've probably done something bad. There's probably, we have some enemies out there. I probably wronged someone at some point in my life to some degree. There's a gradient there, but to some degree. So if I know that that's true, let me try to be as proactive as I can in connecting with the spirit realm in a positive way every day, whether it's a morning prayer, afternoon prayer, whether it's watching uplifting videos on YouTube, listening to positive and uplifting podcasts, something that's enriching your mind that allows your vibration to be higher. And Joanna remarks at the end of this chapter certain things that are very much important for us to remember as we close out our session this evening. She says, because they are the souls of men and women who used to live on earth, they have held on to their values, sometimes suffering and causing suffering for a long time out of ignorance or perversity, habituation, or envy. If you work on your inner silence and morals, you will attune yourself to the high order spirits who guide you and want to share their wisdom and love with you, making your upward progress easier. So there are our own spirit guides that we are assigned to, that are assigned to us rather, I should say, excuse me, We have our own spirit guides that are assigned to us, and also the friendly spirits that are around us, those that want to help us, that want us to tune in to a higher vibration so we can receive their inspiration, their thoughts of hope. They want to help and love us. We just have to do our part and meet them halfway by working on our own morality. Consequently, she says, you will enter regions of imperishable light, experiencing blissful, transcendent emotions. By developing paraphysical perception, you will cease to be a confined prisoner, and you will glide through the realms of ardent life, aware of the resources that God has granted you for your wholeness as an eternal individual. So life is difficult, life is challenging. But with all of that, God has equipped us with the ability to manage and to still find joy and happiness, to be able to tap into higher minds. I'm sure most of you have watched that game show called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And on that game show, the last time I watched it, which was quite a long time ago, I believe they had these lifelines where you could like call a friend, poll the audience, and or ask an expert or something to that effect. You know, if these basic games that exist and when our minds create them, you know, where they're modeled after something, right? So if that's existing, imagine in the spirit realm, you know, God is always there for us to phone in a friend. We don't just have 3 tries. We have like a million plus tries. We can stop, connect, open ourselves up. As Joanna says, we are in constant contact with this psychic, we are immersed in this ocean. This is one of the tools that we have at our disposal to help us day in and day out to live a better life, to find balance, to find connectedness. That's what it's about. Let us use this tool that she calls this opening chapter, the extra physical perception. Let us use our extra physical perception to tap into our resources. When you go to your primary care provider, your doctor annually, and you are trying to work towards either losing weight or some other positive health outcome, and your doctor might suggest you to see a therapist, and then you see your therapist and a nutritionist, and they're also going to ask you, what is your support system that you're pulling from when you're not in this office? And so this is our support system. This is the blessing that God has given to us, to use that lifeline to connect with our guardian angel, with higher minds. And sometimes those higher minds are around us. How many of us grew up thinking that our mothers and fathers didn't know what they were talking about? And how many of you grew up and became an adult and had that aha moment, like, oh, that's why my mother said those things. That's why my father did that. Because they could see a bigger picture, because they wanted the best for me. So we have people around us as well And yes, if we are changing our own lives, if we are hiring our vibration, we're going to encounter people in this physical realm that are like-minded. It's amazing. It's amazing. We believe that's why Joanna in this affirmation, when she mentions the words astounds me, to be astounded, to be in awe of life, to be enchanted with life, is the way in which Saint Francis of Assisi viewed life. Everything to him was with life was total enchantment. Let us take a part of that into us, because we can become so jaded with how negative, with watching all types of media and everything that's going on in the world. Let us still hold fast to our own divine consciousness, assisting the rest of the world. By me being a better person, I'm assisting by elevating the vibrations of this world. If we all would do that, it would be this domino effect. And as Paul said, I believe it was Paul, it's in the Bible, or maybe Jesus said it, forgive me, love covers a multitude of sin. If we all can higher our vibrations to a higher level, we would all be better off for it. So, dear friends, we thank you so much for spending this hour with us and being present with us. And now I wanted to send it back over to Leo. Oh, I think you're muted, Leo. I don't hear you.
Yes, thank you so much. I just unmuted me. I muted myself. Thank you so much for this amazing talk. It really, if I could connect, this message in whichever way possible, it can be connected, right? But to what we have been presenting, throughout the past 2 years, and now this year as well, with the book that we're bringing on the way to the world of regeneration, I would do so. And I think this is an amazing reminder to all of us. What is to connect or to embark into the world of regeneration? Because as we become aware of the more we become aware of this capability, right, to connect with higher minds, to on how to do it and how to do it more effectively and more often, guess what? The more we'll be entering this new era that we talk about all the time. And this actually, it's not something that I am all aware of it, because I've been learning as well. Just like you said, right? There are certain things that we've saying for quite some time, and now we're right there, right at that moment. And I think this is amazing, and it's a great reminder for all of us to do this daily, hourly, every minute of our lives, that we have these connections. We talk about the our guardian angel, our mentors, right? I mean, and we often forget about this, right? The other thing that I want to say as well, giving you a thank you for this, because this is also a representation of this book, Thought and Life. And
Yes,
yes, I am making a little bit of
a plug.
a plug or commercial of the studies that we did in this book as well, right? It's on our group of videos that you can go and search. We study every chapter, and Emmanuel says this, right? That we are in control. We are in control of our thoughts. We can't control what others are saying or doing or acting, but we are in control of what we want to receive and what we want to keep within ourselves. And again, I'm saying this with my heart very humble, that I'm still learning. We all are, and I thank you for bringing this to us and really chatting with us today, and giving this amazing reminder that Joanna de Angelis brings to us. A lot of thank you for our brothers and sisters who are connecting with us here today: Chris, Marisa, Yasko, Abby, Rosalda, Paula, all of you connecting with us and sharing this moment. It's an amazing
That's my mother. Hi,
moment.
Mom.
Yes. I wasn't going to disclose that, but you did. So Mom is watching.
Yes.
That's a great thing, actually. I'm
Yeah.
glad that you're here, Marisa. Giving the support as well. She needs it. I need it. We all need it. and she's and you said something really interesting at the end, right? We do not know what our parents were saying before. Now
Yes,
that
but
we are
now
parents,
we
we
know.
know.
Yeah.
So thank you for sticking with us and not throwing us away.
Yes.
So that's a
Thank
great
God.
thing. But let us go to the comments here, the questions. And yeah, actually, Paula brings in the first question here. What is retrocognition?
Retrocognition, which is different from precognition. So, retrocognition is just a fancy word for hindsight. So, when you're able to look back at what happened, basically, and precognition is before something happens. So, hindsight and then before.
Interesting. And how is that important?
Ooh, it's
I had
important in
to. I had to throw
so
that.
many ways. It's important for so many ways. Because remember, Joanna mentions paraphysical occurrences, telepathy, intuition, clairvoyance, clairaudience, inspiration, precognition, and retrocognition bestow indisputable blessings that are within reach of whoever seeks them. So hindsight is 2020. That's the famous adage, right? When we can look back and learn and say, "Man, maybe that wasn't a great decision that I made." Hindsight is 2020. We see now clearly what we didn't see back then. Joanna says that in and of itself is a blessing. And believe it or not, as simple as that is, many of us do not embark on that simple mental practice.
On that thought, Kirsten, and I know we have other questions, but you just remind me of something that I'd like to share here, and you can
Please.
answer it. Would that be the reason why our mentors, these higher mentors, they are so kind to us? Because they can see their past and they can see that we don't see it yet, and they're connecting with us?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's the reason why our parents love us because they have hindsight. They know that back when they were young, that they, probably weren't the brightest, or maybe that they were, but they know that at some point they weren't as great as they were today, and that we all have that journey. So, and that's why there's so much wisdom in Joanna's writing and in Spiritism, right? That the more I work on myself, the more I have compassion for others. So the more I work on myself, the more elevated I become, the more that I grow. I'm able to serve as a teacher, ergo, a spirit guide. Obviously, if I've been assigned a spirit guide, that spirit is more elevated than I am. That spirit has reached a higher grade level than I have. And so when we reach that, it's because we've worked enough on ourselves. We realize how difficult it is to reach there, and then we have compassion for others. It's just by the mere or the sheer act of going through that experience, it provides that hindsight for us.
Thank you
So
so
good,
much.
good.
I'm glad that I asked the question.
Yes, yes. No, that was good,
Because
Leo.
it's all towards how we perceive others as well, right? And as difficult as it is for us to see what's going on around us and say, it's not that we're going to be complacent. There is a difference, there's a huge difference there, but it's hard for us to see it. At times I'm saying, if I don't say anything, I'm being complacent. Well, even if you say it, guess what? The person or the situation will not resolve itself, because there is a need of wisdom. There's a need of there's a learning lesson, unfortunate learning lesson, because sometimes it can be from the negative, right? But it's so true, and I'm glad that you brought this, and it was like mind blowing.
Joanna is
But
great in
thank
that
you.
respect.
Oh yes,
Before we bring Yasko's question, I'm sorry, Leah, I wanted to
sure.
comment on something you said. Um, because you're right in what you're saying, that if someone is not ready to change, no matter what we say to them, they're not going to change. However, however, in the book Happy Life that we read today, the small little book, actually we read previous to opening up our session today, and forgive me, I did not mark it, and I wish I had. Maybe it was 138. No, it wasn't. But in any event, in this book, she mentions that we should always love anyway. Even though we're not going to see the results in the other person, we should love anyway. Love, in our very limited understanding, is this ability to, much like our parents are looking at us as children and saying, well, they'll get there someday. We have to have that view, that perspective of some people because they're not there yet. And the best thing we can do is to love them, which means we can pray for them. Loving them does not mean that we're going to partake, support, engage, facilitate any of the negative behaviors, but that I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to love them. And when they're ready to come home, I'm going to have my arms wide open. But that is between that person and God. It is between me, God, myself, to make those changes within me. So I just wanted to mention that too, because communication is a very important thing. And it's not understood enough how to communicate appropriately. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I have Yasko commenting or in questioning posing a question, saying, "Hi, Kirsten. If we are psychic beings, even unconsciously, what would be the best for our well-being? Raise our awareness of this extra physical perception during our ordinary activities throughout our day, or dedicate some special short periods to concentrate and enhance this perception?"
Thank you so much, Yasko, and we miss you. Thank you for your question and participating. That's a great question. And we would like to say that everybody's different. So it's not a cookie cutter mold. It's not a one size fits all. For everyone, it's different. So, but with that being said, when we have a belief system, when we believe in something, and it inevitably gets intertwined in all aspects of our lives. But again, with that being said, and the need for us to be proactive in our lives, I would say both. To answer your question, Yasko, it would both be to find time, maybe short periods of connecting to the divine, connecting to our spirituality or what have you. It would also be raising our awareness of this extra physical perception during our ordinary activities in our everyday lives, finding, gratitude and just being astounded and enchanted with life itself and knowing how delicate, but also how long it took for us to reach the level that we're at. And to understand in our day to day interactions with people that people can be under a spirit influence, negative or positive, and oftentimes it's a negative influence, and then they end up being rude or having some sort of behavior that is disturbing to those around them. But instead of just judging them and going, oh my gosh, they're a terrible person, we're bringing into that situation our awareness that that person is a whole universe in and of themselves, and we don't know what's going on with them. And just as much as when we're having a bad day, we would like compassion, so it should be for others. So yes, it should be both. And that is just my humble 2 cents in that.
Thank you, Kirsten. And then we have Paula asking, don't we need relationships we attract as they mirror back to us our positive and negative qualities as we observe what pleases or triggers us in this in the on excuse me us in their behaviors? Sorry.
Absolutely. We are social beings. We are meant to live in society. We are meant to be amongst one another. And the benefit of that is that if you come to the table with this idea that, like an orange, and if you squeeze an orange and juice comes out of it, who's at fault for that juice? Is it my hand, or is it because that orange contained within it the juice? So no matter what was going to squish it, it was going to come out. So we approach our interactions with people not in an accusatory way, like, oh my gosh, this person made me feel angry, but rather, as Paula so nicely said it, when we pay attention to our triggers, and also what pleases us, but the things that trigger us, and there's another buzzword or word that's used out there called trailheads, and I kind of like that a little bit better than trigger, because the word triggering or trigger has such a negative connotation at this point that we really appreciate trailhead, because trailhead is something that alerts us, like, hey, there's something here that I need to get more curious about. Now, triggering has been the word that we use, and it's the most common, and everyone knows it, so it's good to use. But much like a lot of things in this life, we try to reframe how we look at things. So instead of looking at them as triggers, but rather as opportunities for growth. But we can still call them triggers. That's okay too. But maybe just changing it also our perspective, so not viewing it in such a negative way. So yes, it is good to have people around us. So regardless of who's around us, regardless of who it is, it could be our mother, father, sister, next door neighbor, you know, our our doctor, it could be anyone who we interact with on a day-to-day basis. Any of those people can trigger us, can bring about a trailhead, a part of us to come out that we need to work on, that there oftentimes, we're having parts of us that come out that disturb us, or we get angry, we get upset. Those are things we need to get curious about. Why am I feeling this way? Why does this person beeping their horn behind me aggravate me so much? Why? We don't ask the question, why? Why am I so triggered? Why do I feel like this? Why does that make me angry? Why does my husband leaving the toilet seat up make me so infuriated? What part of you is activated? Get curious and get to know that part of you, and you will find a deeper understanding of yourself that we can promise. Thank you, Paula, for your question.
Thank you, Kirsten, for the answer as well. That's very nice. And then Chris, Daniel, not Chris. I misjudged the picture there. It was so small. Daniel says, "How can we use this psyche energy to help during this current time of war and health issues that our planet is going through?"
I think I kind of mentioned it too a little bit. Daniel, thank you for your question. Just by the sheer act of us working on ourselves by means of connecting with higher vibrations, by being more intentional in our lives, as was talked about here, but with Yasko asked the question about, raising awareness of this extra physical perception during ordinary activities, and also finding time to connect with the divine. All of that, we are hiring our vibration, and by just the sheer act of that and the domino effect of that, we begin to change. We begin to become a better person. That affects the vibration of our world. Can you imagine if an entire state just agreed to work on being a better society, better people? If everyone everyone agrees to the mission of every day, each one of us in our own respective ways are going to be more intentional, living more positively, more uplifting, connecting, and with my higher power, or whatever you want to call it, higher self. um, it would make so much of a vibrational difference on this planet. It would be amazing. And I think it was Divaldo Franco who said that if we simply had, like, I think it was something like 200 people like Mother Teresa living on the earth, or someone like her, someone that we know that has devoted their lives to others, that alone will raise the vibration of this planet tremendously. So, who is responsible for doing that? Who? It's a rhetorical question. It's us, right?
Well, thank you. It is. I'm just gonna post one more comment here that Paula said. Thank you for legitimizing extra physical perception and the aliens with antennas. So it is true, right? I mean, we connect with different ways, but it's a great representation of what's in our unconscious, and the way we connect and everything. So this is an amazing reminder to all of us. And I would like to add, and we already mentioned here, directly and indirectly, is that we choose what we're watching, we choose what we are connecting with, and it's very easy now to turn on the TV and see a lot of issues going on, in terms of war and whatnot. And that's why we said in our prayers as well, let us take care of our own little wars, right? Our own little issues. Connect with the higher minds. Get get curious, as you said, about these capabilities that we have, right? Inside first, and then connect with the outside in a more elevated way. So thank you for that. As everybody's also saying, good night, peace and light to everyone. Translating here, Marcella also saying, yeah, I cannot click on it. Hey friends, and Yasko saying thanks for the helpful affirmations, and much more that we get, that we feel as well. I do feel the connection when we're here together, which is an example what you mentioned here today too, Kirsten, and I know you do too. It's always amazing to spend this time with our friends. With no further ado, I would like to pass the word back to you for your final words and to say the final prayer, please.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you, everyone. So, our final words are, let us be kind, let us be prayerful for one another, let us be prayerful not only for our own families, but the families of those who are suffering, especially now in this time of aggression. You can only imagine the amount of negativity out there. So let us be intentional with putting out into the world more love and positivity as best we can. So, with that in mind, join me in this final prayer as we close out this blessing of an evening, connecting with all of you and all of the higher minds with immense gratitude in our hearts, with immense jubilation in our spirit, with immense humility for being able to take part in this beautiful banquet, to be loved by such a creator, to be reminded that we are all children of God. We are grateful. We thank you, dear spirit benefactors. We thank our guardian angels. We thank all those who help make these moments possible. And we thank you, dear Father, Mother God. We know that although we are so far from understanding who and what you are, that never changes how close you are to us in our hearts. May each one of us that are present here today receive this warm embrace from you, our loving Creator, and our governor of this planet, Jesus. May his loving vibrations embrace all those in Europe, especially those minds in Russia and in the Ukraine. May all the heads of states be inspired by their guardian angel to think again, to choose love and peace. We pray for those who are suffering, and may your loving aid be there with them. We thank you for the blessing of this life and for these moments, dear God, and so be it.